Thank you so much. Good afternoon, dear AFI members. Without further ado, please allow me to invite our esteemed panelists for the next session to the stage. So we have speaking today Deputy Governor Francis Chipimo of the Bank of Zambia. Deputy Governor, if you'd like to come up to the stage. Thank you. We have Dr. Marwa El-Hosari, General Manager of the Central Bank of Egypt. And we have Mr. Clarence Blay, Director Payment Systems at the Bank of Ghana. Let's have a round of applause for them all. Now, I noticed that some of you are sitting very, very far away from me. I can hardly see the people at the back. We do have a lot of seats vacant now towards the front as the technical tracks are going on in parallel. So do please feel free to make your way to the front of the room so we can be a bit closer together. Now, colleagues, let me start this session with a simple question. How do we know if our financial inclusion strategies are truly delivering? The central banks and financial regulators in this very room have collectively implemented more than 1,000 inclusive finance policy changes, adopted more than 50 national financial inclusion strategies, developed a very extensive library of policy guidance and toolkits, and have ratified 7 AFI policy models. But the question remains, how do we systematically track both the implementation and the effectiveness of these policies at the country level? How do we as a network ensure that the policies adopted are actually changing lives, including for women, for youth, for people with disabilities, for displaced persons? This is the challenge that AFI members have set out to solve, and it is why we have co-created with members and for members a new initiative on which we update you today, the Financial Inclusion Country Assessment, or FICA. You can think of FICA as a kind of super peer review, not only of an individual policy or regulation, but a macro level review of a country's state of financial inclusion and the effectiveness of its financial inclusion strategy in translating policy guidance into real world outcomes. The FICA methodology is a 6-step process, beginning with application, then self-assessment, technical peer review, effectiveness evaluation, report and recommendation development, and finally, a monitoring and follow-up process. The FICA initiative is designed to do 3 things. Firstly, as a check on the technical implementation of AFI's policy models and other key policy guidance at country level. Secondly, to test the actual effectiveness of policies implemented. Are they moving the needle, especially for underserved and disadvantaged groups who have been left behind for too long? And thirdly, FICA is there to generate practical policy recommendations to help the assessed country move forward even further and faster in their financial inclusion journey. In other words, FICA is there to close the loop, to ensure the policy guidance developed in the network doesn't remain theoretical and aspirational, but actually becomes measurable impact in all our member countries. And we're pleased to update you today that this new initiative is not only existing at the conceptual level, but it's already been piloted by 2 very brave pioneers in the network, our members from Zambia, the Bank of Zambia and Ministry of Finance of Zambia, and also the Central Bank of Philippines, BSP, who have volunteered for their countries to be assessed under the program. We've also benefited immensely from members of the working group who volunteered their time to serve as FICA assessors in the pilot programs. So we'd like to thank Clarence, Prudence, Thelma, Papile, Khaled, Roberto, George, and Shahana for their dedication and contributions as assessors. Yes, let's have a round of applause. Good to see some of them in the audience today as well. And in today's session, we're going to be hearing from three leaders who've been at the heart of this journey so far. So Deputy Governor Francis Chipimo from the Bank of Zambia will share firsthand the country experience of being assessed under FICA. Clarence Blay from Bank of Ghana co-led the assessment team and will speak to lessons learned across the pilots. And Dr. Marwa El-Hosari from Central Bank of Egypt is vice chair of the AFI Global Standard and Policy Committee that is tasked with overseeing and guiding the strategic development of the FICA service. So our objective in this session is to leave you with a clear understanding of FICA's methodology and potential benefits to members, a sense of how it can be supportive of policy design and strategy evaluation, and also insights into the planned next steps for wider take-up and adoption in the AFI network. So I'm going to move across now to start the conversation. Deputy Governor Dr. Chipimo, if I may please start with you. Zambia has been one of the pioneers of this process. You are one of the first countries to briefly raise your hand and volunteer to participate in the pilot assessments. So I'd like to ask what motivated your decision to participate in the pilots? How do you see the value add of this initiative to what you are doing?
Is that on? Okay. So thank you very much, Robin, and good afternoon, everybody. I think since this is the first time I'm speaking, I just also wanted to add my thanks and commendation to the Bank of Namibia for really the wonderful reception we've received and the wonderful arrangements which have been made. It certainly provides a very good environment for us to talk about some very important things. So in terms of Zambia's, what drove us to take on this, I was fortunate to serve on the GSPC at the time that this product was actually approved and adopted. And it just seemed right that when there was an opportunity to put your hand up that we should do so. But the bigger picture for us deciding to participate was actually that we'd done quite a lot of work in this financial inclusion space. We had a national financial inclusion strategy, as many countries have. We'd finished that first phase, or the first one, and then we'd developed a new financial inclusion strategy. And we'd been adopting AFI policies and trying to adjust our regulatory regime. And so it seemed a very important product to almost have an assurance of how are you doing? What can you do better? And it was particularly important because in the financial inclusion space, I think it was part of the conversation earlier today. Central banks are very important drivers. Because of our role, for example, in Zambia, in the payment system space, in the financial sector, there's a lot of leverage we have to push inclusion. But there are many other players who are involved. And sometimes it's a very difficult group to corral. Sometimes you feel like you're herding cats. But so it was important for us to say, let's have a sense of how are we doing? How can we best benefit from the breadth of knowledge which is there in AFI? We see it, and we see just the range of products which have been implemented. So that was really the background to our participation. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And now, some months on, we're at a relatively advanced stage in the assessment. So could you share, has it met your expectations so far, and maybe any words of advice for perhaps other member countries in the room that would be thinking about participating in the FICA program in future?
Okay, so the first thing, I need to really thank the team and the AFI management unit. I think they did really a marvelous job. And I'm not saying that because you found everything to be perfect. I think there were some interesting areas where we can certainly do a lot more, which is what one would expect. But I think that the team did a very good job. We've just received the draft report, so we're still working through. I think for us, it's been a very, very important process, and we have got a lot of benefit from it. Firstly, There was a review of the National Financial Inclusion Strategy itself and how that is set up, what are we addressing. I think that that's been very refreshing to have almost like an assurance of, have you basically got the foundations for success? And to what extent are we drawing from the benefits or the experiences which we've received from other countries? Then there's also the question of, and I think this was an issue of yesterday's discussion. I think Alfred had made, in his opening remarks, had talked a bit about the environment we face and what's AFI's space in that. I think one of the things which came out is impact and effectiveness. And again, it was very interesting for me. I kind of looked at this a bit of a higher level, but it was interesting just reading the report and looking at what is it telling us about how effective our policies are, how effective our coordination is, and how can we improve that in the specific areas of intervention which were covered. So for us, it gave us very practical assessments, sometimes very honest assessments. So for example, we have a secretariat which coordinates our National Financial Inclusion Strategy. There were some fairly blunt assessments that could be done, managed a lot better, and perhaps we need to put a lot more resources in how that is managed. So there were some things which hit you and you say, okay, indeed, we can do better here. But we've come away from what I've seen with a lot of advice on how we can better implement our policies. And what's important for me is that most of us are doing so many things in financial inclusion. It's not like we don't know what to do. I think it's about looking at your environment and saying, given where you are, how best can you achieve our financial inclusion objectives? And that's a very powerful thing which we have benefited from.
Thank you so much, Deputy Governor. I think that's incredibly helpful to understand the context and the experience of one of the countries that's been through the whole process. I'll come back to you in a moment, if I may, but I'd like to bring in now Clarence for your perspective as an assessor. You co-led the assessment team for Zambia. So from that perspective, how do you see the value of this FICA initiative for AFI, maybe compared to the existing services that we have already, but also what was your personal experience as an assessor?
Thank you, AFI, for giving me this opportunity to be part of the team of the first assessors for this groundbreaking project, and also the opportunity to be on this platform to share our experiences. And for the host country, Namibia, for the wonderful reception and all the wonderful goodies that we've had. We are extremely grateful. Now, coming back to your question, the first thing is that as an individual assessor, and having been a member of the AFI network, your responsibility makes you take a step back to assess how effectively you are imbibing and assimilating the policy models that have been put out there. Because you cannot be an assessor without well-grounded on the policy models that have been issued. Secondly, one has to take the position of an assessor to be able to ask intelligent questions and also in a structured manner such that you can compare results with your colleagues. Now the issue is one has to now immerse him or herself to learn a lot about the policy models out there. If you have forgotten your research methods and your survey analysis, you have to go back and dust your textbooks to begin to take a deep dive into them to do this exercise. It was more of a learning curve for some of us because no one has done financial inclusion country assessment before. And for me, that was the exciting part. So it was a lot of collaboration with the AFI management unit, trying to come out with a model that will best fit the circumstances for now. We believe that it is still work in progress, and some of the observations will help shape whatever we have been able to put out there. The second thing is that AFI now has closed the loop to have a complete circle of a 360-degree of what AFI has been doing in the network. I take it that we were doing about 180. With the financial inclusion country assessment, we have closed the circle. And what do I mean by that? When it comes to individual policies, we are looking at peer review, but at the national level, in terms of the financial inclusion efforts, how do we get members to take a step back and look at what they have done and tell themselves, where did we go wrong, or where did we get it right? Where we have an opportunity to deepen financial inclusion by changing the way we go about things. And it is all about the individual country doing that with the support of peer countries. So as Robin said, a macro level peer review. The other second benefit is that this policies is about helping members of the network. Impact analysis of the policies. How do we get them unless they are tested in the field from various jurisdictions? The subtleties of successes and challenges will have to be gathered to help revise policies. So these are the three critical benefits that individuals who are part of the assessment team, individual countries, and the AFI network as a whole stand to gain with this FICA project.
Thanks so much, Clarence. And as a follow-up to that, of course, a critical success factor for this initiative is to have a strong, talented and committed pipeline of future assessors for the program. From your experience, what would you say to members that are maybe interested in this role, what benefit they can derive from it, but also what would you see as the critical skill set for a FICA assessor?
Well, this advice will go to both prospective members of the assessment group as well as AFI as a network. The first thing is that we did this without any structured training program. So it means that there were a lot of gaps. We had to work together to close the gaps. I believe that there should be a training program for assessors based on the experience that we have gathered from these first two pilots. The second thing goes to those people who have interest in joining this team. The first one is to build themselves as individuals technically by familiarizing themselves to a greater depth with the AFI policy models, and go beyond that by having a critical mind, because some of the policy models have been in place for a while, and AFI will value contributions from members who take a critical look at these policy models and say that with the fruition of time, there is a need for some adjustment to be made to some of these policy models to make them more relevant to the needs of the market or to our stakeholders. That is critical. The second one goes beyond the technical skills. Interviewing, you should be able to pick some kind of behavioral cues from the kind of tone that you use, the words that you use, and how you interact with the people. It's not an inquisitorial kind of exercise. It's more of a friendly discussion, helping the entities that you are trying to assist in reviewing their financial inclusion effort to understand certain things that they could have done better or maybe think about it. It's also a fact-finding exercise because no two countries are the same. Some of the implementations may rest with certain institutions in some countries. In another country, you have some of the things fused together. It doesn't mean that one model is better than the other, provided it's delivering the intended result. So that kind of awareness for one to tone down in dealing with some of these things is critical. And that is where the training comes in to get people to appreciate the nature of the exercise beyond technical competence.
Thank you, Clarence. That's a very critical point about being flexible and adapted to the specific context of the country being assessed. And the need for more structured training, I think that brings us nicely into a discussion around the future of the FICA program in AFI. And I'd like to bring in Dr. Marwa here, especially in your role as Vice Chair of the GSPC. First of all, how do you see this FICA service complementing existing AFI initiatives? Do you think it would be something of interest also to you in the Central Bank of Egypt?
Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. What a tremendous work. I have to be honest with you. FICA actually got me surprised. It adds to the services of the AFI is successfully indeed delivering to its member institutions. To have such kind of tool to assess the impact on the ground of the financial inclusion strategies, national financial inclusion strategies is really something very nice, it's about time to have it. Like what has been, we have experienced, all of us, maybe, the FATF mutual risk assessment that has been conducted, the FSAB exercises with the IMF, World Bank, and so on. So it's about the right time of having such a tool for financial inclusion impact. From my perspective, I'd love to, but this requires a lot to do on the ground. And I remember what Clarence was saying in the committee, the last committee, that we have to take in mind that the strategy has to be implemented in order to have a clearer vision about what has been conducted on the ground and what is the right impact on the ground, to measure the right impact on the ground. So I think FICA can serve as a model for how financial inclusion can be embedded into supervisory expectations. Along with that, it's not just an assessment, it's a commitment for collaboration and commitment for accountability and to build financial systems that is truly empowering people. So I'd love to thank AFI for this initiative. GSP, I'm sure GSP working group was a big part, a big chunk of the work when it comes to this. I knew from Khalid, who was one of the assessors of the pilot countries. It's a very comprehensive methodology. He praised it too much, I know. And taking into consideration everything, regulations, implementation, and everything. So thanks, AFI, for such a thing, really. And I encourage actually countries to contribute and to be piloted. And I believe we would love to. We have here all the Central Bank of Egypt management, so we might want to think about it. We would love to, I think so.
Thank you so much. I think you're doing a great job of selling it to all the members here in the room. But in respect of the committee's role, you also have a mandate to make recommendations, maybe how this service could be even more refined in future based on the experience of the pilots. Any recommendations there you'd already like to share for further enhancement?
Yes, please. I'd love first to thank Bank of Zambia, Central Bank of the Philippines, for their courage, because I believe they don't know what is the methodology of assessment. If the assessors would come with the right recommendation, I loved what I heard here from Bank of Zambia Deputy Governor about, yes, it's doable, and we have to go further for implementation when it comes to the national financial inclusion strategies. One more thing that I want to maybe highlight or capitalize on this recent initiative, and I believe it's not costly at all. AFI to avail the methodology, the tool itself, to member institutions to self-assess themselves. I believe that we will love to do something like this. We would love to go for the thematic areas that we are interested in. I know that the FICA considered so much the thematic areas of the member institutions that have been that have been saying that it has to be measured within their jurisdictions. So I'd love to have something like this in order to assess all efforts that is conducted within the country itself. Yes, we have, as a Central Bank of Egypt, a monetary and evaluation tool, but I think it might be, no, it doesn't might be. It will add, the methodology will add, I'm sure, the angle of impact on the ground. Because like Mai was saying at the previous session, that yes, we measure the impact on the ground for specific projects that we are conducting within the central bank. Yes, we're measuring the targets, the KPIs and everything, but we would love to have this tool in order to self-assess ourselves. Moreover, and I think I missed it within the last meeting, I think we might avail like a tab or something on the data portal of AFI to voluntarily having the member institutions upload their self-risk assessment. From there, I think we might, the assessors will have maybe a concrete documentation of what the country they would assess will have on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are truly excellent suggestions, and management unit will be very happy to engage with you and the other committee members on how we can implement some of those going forwards. Now, we don't have too much time left, but I'd like to ask a couple of final questions to all of the panelists. Firstly, how should countries think about the timing and frequency of a FICA assessment? Do you have views on where in the policy cycle it would be most useful? Should it be kind of midway through a financial inclusion strategy, maybe at the end of one strategy before another one is launched? Any ideas on that? And whoever would like to start.
Okay, maybe let me start. I think that's an important question because I think there were 4 things probably which I would have wanted to leave colleagues with. I think the first one is whether you're ready for the assessment. And I think, like has been said, we kind of jumped into this. And then afterwards, I was thinking to myself, are we ready? What should we think about? And so the point about it for me is that it's very important what you said, that you have something to assess. Because we do so much in financial inclusion space, and people on the ground know so much. If you're really going to get value added, it's very important that you yourself understand the work you've done and what you're not sure about, even if there's a lot you're not sure about. And I think that's a very important point. And therefore, it's not just to say, let's do it for the sake of doing it. I think where you are in the cycle is very important. For us, it came really at an interesting time because we'd had one strategy, we'd reviewed it, we'd had sort of external support in doing that. We got into a new strategy, but before it's fully getting going, we at least have a sense now that, is it well grounded? Is it applying best practice or the relevant experience across? So I think for me, that's one thing. The second thing is, as a country undergoing the assessment, first of all, there is an issue of time, which I think, we put our hand up in end of 2023. This process started, whatever, in June, and it's ended in March this year. It's a long time. And perhaps we need to think about how we can make that process more efficient. Yeah, because I think that does create challenges. Now, I accept that this was a pilot, so I guess you take that on board. But we also had a lot of challenges in terms of how do you marshal all of the relevant stakeholders. Now, it helps that we had just gone into a second strategy, so already you had been engaging people, but it's still quite an issue to get all the different parties to the table and to engage in this process, which they're not really very sure about. So I think that was an important point for us and which we found very useful. On the AFI management side, I think it's really perhaps a bit of clarity about when are you ready? I mean, for the management unit to be able to also say, these are the kind of principles we think you need to have before you go, because we upload our progress and so on. So you do have a lot of information about where we are, and I think that's an important role you have to say. I can't say enough about the importance of having a strong group of assessors. And the more diverse, the better, in my view. The only thing I would add is that I think because the way in which we implement our policies is going to be different given our institutional structures, it's very important, I think, that you have on-site visits. I just don't see how you can fully get the full benefit of knowledge, of sharing, of context, if you really don't have that. And so for us, I think we found that very good. The last point is I don't know whether 1 week was enough. I'm kind of had a look at the report, and you did quite a lot of work, so I'm not sure about that. But I think those would be my points. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Deputy Governor. The great recommendations.
One other
Please.
point I wanted to add. I think, although we're not at that point, though, having a strong framework for feedback formally is important. I know we haven't yet got there yet, but I think it's important that is there. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Any final recommendations, Clarence or Marwa, for something you want to leave the room with to think about on this going forwards?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity once again. And I would like to emphasize what the governor from Zambia has just said about building relevant data to aid the assessment. And I will recommend that anyone who has implemented the National Financial Inclusion Strategy and want to have a sequel to that strategy will have to, out of necessity, undertake this exercise to inform the next strategy. It's going to be critical in having a better strategy, else you are going to repeat whatever you have done in the past, and you are not going to get a different result if you want to deepen financial inclusion. That's the first thing. The second thing also goes to strengthen what the governor from Egypt said concerning the self-assessment, and that means that we need to look at the structure of the questionnaire and also have some kind of training for countries that are going to respond to the questionnaire. They are going to provide response to the questionnaire as part of the exercise. That makes it easier for them to provide the correct responses. It's very important. The other thing has to do with financial inclusion data. Most of the times when we talk of financial inclusion data, we tend to over-concentrate on the gender disaggregated data. But there is more to it, and a lot of data can be obtained through the statistical service. But the challenge is that with limited budget of most countries, how do we get our statistical service or institute, those who collect statistical data nationwide, to make adequate provision for data that is of importance to financial inclusion? We look at individual countries and we can get some kind of data there, but that kind of intentionality in structuring their data collection tools to pick some of these data is very important. And this is the same exercise, maybe a few more fields to cater for some of these things helps, because it's one of the things that we saw, that to be able to have a better impact assessment, you need to have the data. And you cannot only rely solely on central bank data. You will be telling part of the story. The other thing has to do with governance, which may not be in the AFI policy model, but it is a way of bringing all the stakeholders together and ensuring that the process through which financial inclusion programs are executed carries everybody along and everybody knows what he or she is doing. That is also very important. But AFI presence on the ground, not only visiting the central bank, but other stakeholders, is critical. People feel that they are valued in the process, and they will do everything to support whatever happens. So some of the things may not be, may be social-psychological in nature. That sense of belongingness, that value placed on their work is critical. Last but not the least, it's about training training, structured template for responses, and a transparent tool for analysis, and also communicating to the entity being assessed that it is more of a support program. These are the things that I want us to have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Marwa, you've given us so many rich suggestions already, but any final thought you'd like to leave the room with here?
Yeah, I just encourage all AFI members to actively engage and participate with FECA process, not only to strengthen their national financial inclusion strategies, but also to contribute to refine the global standards, the global financial standards. And one final word, I just want to maybe thank AFI for having this, event in such a beautiful country. I loved here. I loved people here. Really. Thank you, Central Bank of Namibia, for hosting us. And that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That's a wonderful note to end on. So let me thank the panel for their candid and insightful sharing. The FICA is aiming to bring more rigor, more accountability into the implementation of our financial inclusion strategies. And I think the suggestions made today will really help us move in that direction. So there will be more to come. But for now, thank you so much for your attention. And please join me in thanking the speakers for their insights.
Thank you so much. Another round of applause for our panelist and moderator. As they are taking the official picture, I will just inform us that we are going for a coffee break until 4 o'clock. Then we'll all convene in the plenary. Those that are attending the breakout sessions will be back at 4 o'clock, and we'll start with the AFI Awards program. Thank you so much. Coffee break is at the pool site.